290 together in there, because I don't actually think I had enough power in my body to beat the man without him.
Today, we'll be looking at the wrestlers Bob Backlund hated. Why did he hate working with them? The reasons range from clashing wrestling styles to behind-the-scenes tension and personality differences. Sometimes it was all business, other times it got personal. But let's be honest, real-life heat always makes things more interesting in the ring. So without wasting any more time, let's dive into the names that really got under Backlund's skin. Starting off with Bret Hart. Now this one's pretty interesting. On the surface, you'd think Bob Backlund and Bret Hart would have clicked. Both were technically sound, old-school wrestlers who took pride in their in-ring work. And for a while, it seemed like they were going to have something special. Their feud in the mid-90s had real potential, especially with both of them being former WWF champions and representing two different eras of wrestling. Backlund was the serious, no-nonsense throwback to the old WWF days, while Bret was the face of the new generation era, all about fast-paced action and smooth storytelling in the ring. But when WrestleMania 11 rolled around, things didn't go as planned. The match they had that night was supposed to be the big payoff to their rivalry. An I Quit match where one man had to verbally surrender to lose. Sounds dramatic, right? Well, Bret Hart later admitted he hated that match. In fact, he called it the worst pay-per-view match of his entire career. That's a big statement coming from someone who had hundreds of matches in his time. So what went wrong? According to Bret, the I Quit stipulation really hurt the flow of the match. It forced them to slow things down and made it hard to build momentum. Add in a few awkward moments and some questionable pacing, and you've got a match that just didn't live up to expectations. Backlund, being more of a traditional grappler, may not have meshed perfectly with Bret's more modern, storytelling-driven style that night. Still, to be fair, both men have shown respect for each other outside the ring. There was never any personal bitterness, just a professional mismatch that left both guys a little disappointed in the end. Up next, we've got Ken Patera. And yeah, that might sound a little surprising, right? After all, both he and Bob Backlund came from legit athletic backgrounds. Patera was an Olympic weightlifter who made the jump into pro wrestling, and Backlund was a college wrestling standout known for his crazy endurance and clean-cut image. On paper, they should have respected each other. But once they stepped into the ring, things didn't exactly go smoothly. Their feud happened during Backlund's first run as WWF champion, and it wasn't just another storyline. This one had a real clash of styles, and maybe even egos. Patera brought raw power and brute strength. He wasn't trying to out-wrestle anyone. He was trying to dominate them. Meanwhile, Backlund stuck to his technical roots, holds, counters, and endless stamina. That contrast made their matches intense, but also a little tense behind the scenes. There was this undercurrent of who the real athlete was. Patera saw himself as the stronger man, the one with the Olympic background and powerlifting records to back it up. Backlund, on the other hand, prided himself on being a pure wrestler who could go the distance with anyone. That made their rivalry more than just physical. It was personal, even if they didn't always say it out loud. They ended up having a series of tough, hard-hitting matches that tested both guys. And while they delivered some memorable moments in the ring, you could tell there was friction bubbling underneath. It wasn't about hating each other in a loud or dramatic way. It was more about two guys who saw the business and each other very differently. And when that happens in wrestling, even the best matches can come with a side of real-life tension. So who takes the next spot on the list? That would be none other than superstar Billy Graham. And oh boy, this one had all the ingredients for a fiery rivalry. If you know anything about wrestling in the late 70s and early 80s, then you know just how different Graham and Backlund were, both in and out of the ring. Graham was the total opposite of Bob Backlund in almost every way. He was loud, flashy, and full of charisma. He strutted around the ring with colorful tights, big muscles, and an even bigger personality. Fans either loved him or loved to hate him. Backlund, on the other hand, was the all-American boy, quiet, humble, and straight-laced. He represented the hard-working, clean-living champion. So when these two clashed, it was more than just a title match. It was a battle of two completely different worlds. Their rivalry became a huge part of Backlund's early WWF championship reign. Graham, who had been a former champ himself, was out to prove he was still the man. The tension between them kept building, and the fans ate it up. Every time they faced off, it felt like a big deal. One of their most talked about matches was a steel cage showdown at Madison Square Garden. That match wasn't just a brawl, it was a full-on war that showed just how deep the rivalry ran. But behind the scenes, it wasn't all mutual respect. Backlund reportedly didn't care for Graham's over-the-top style, seeing it as too flashy and not real wrestling. Meanwhile, Graham may have felt overshadowed or underappreciated during Backlund's reign. So while the two created magic in the ring, their personal differences made this feud even more intense. It was old-school wrestling versus wild showmanship, and that made it unforgettable. And now we come to the big one, Hulk Hogan. Yep, even the Hulkster didn't escape Bob Backlund's disapproval. This one might not have played out in the ring like some of the others, but behind the scenes? Oh, there was definitely some tension. According to Hogan himself, Backlund wasn't exactly a fan. In fact, Hogan once said that Backlund didn't think he was a real athlete or someone who deserved to carry the WWF Championship. That's a pretty bold opinion, especially considering Hogan would go on to become one of the biggest stars in wrestling history. But if you look at where both men were coming from, it kind of makes sense. Backlund was a traditionalist. He believed in technical wrestling, clean living, and working hard to earn your spot. To him, being champion wasn't just about looking the part. It was about being able to wrestle in the purest sense. Hogan, on the other hand, was all about the larger-than-life persona. He had the muscles, the charisma, and the crowd on his side. But he didn't exactly wrestle like Backlund. His matches were more about energy and entertainment than headlocks and chain wrestling. So when Hogan started rising through the ranks, Backlund reportedly tried to convince Vince McMahon Sr. that Hogan wasn't championship material. He didn't see Hogan as someone who fit the mold of what a WWF champion should be. That definitely didn't sit well with Hogan, and it probably created a quiet but very real friction between the two. In the end, Hogan's star power won out, and he became the face of the company. But deep down, you get the sense that Backlund never really approved. It was a passing of the torch, but not one given willingly. Moving on, let's talk about Kevin Nash, better known to WWF fans as Diesel. Now, this one didn't explode into a big feud like some of the others, but the tension was definitely there. And it mostly came down to one thing: style. Bob Backlund and Kevin Nash were just two completely different kinds of wrestlers, and that difference ended up being too big to ignore. By the time Diesel was rising in the WWF, the company was moving into a new era. Bigger guys, more flashy moves, and a faster pace were becoming the norm. Kevin Nash fit that mold perfectly. He was tall, powerful, and had that cool, quiet toughness about him. Meanwhile, Backlund was still holding on to his old-school, technical wrestling approach. He was all about holds, mat wrestling, and strategy. That's the style that had worked for him in the late 70s and early 80s, but by the mid-90s, the game was changing fast. Scott Hall, who was close to Nash and worked alongside him during this time, once mentioned that Backlund's style just didn't click with guys like Diesel. The chemistry wasn't there. Their matches didn't flow the way fans, or the company, had hoped. It was like trying to mix oil and water. You could tell something was off. Because of that, whatever plans WWF had for a longer feud between Backlund and Diesel ended up getting scrapped pretty quickly. The idea might have looked good on paper, veteran champion versus the new powerhouse, but in the ring it just didn't work. Backlund was too stuck in his old ways, and Diesel was too much of the new breed. It wasn't personal, necessarily, but the disconnect was real. And sometimes in wrestling, when the styles don't match, the whole thing falls apart before it even gets going. Now let's move on to one of the most famous rivalries in the real heat that existed between Bob Backlund and the Iron Chic. This one's a bit different because the tension seemed to come mostly from the Iron Chic side, and it was pretty intense. While Backlund and the Iron Chic worked together professionally in the ring, the Iron Chic didn't hold back when talking about Backlund in interviews, making it clear he had some serious feelings about their rivalry. In fact, the Iron Chic has made some pretty bold statements about beating Backlund. In an interview on Tales from the Turnbuckle, he proudly said, "I defeat Mr. Bob Backlund and break his back. I am legend." That's some strong wording, showing just how much that victory meant to him. To the Iron Chic, beating Backlund wasn't just another win, It was a major accomplishment that cemented his place in wrestling history. But it didn't stop there. In a WWE.com interview, the Iron Chic went even further, talking up his own wrestling skills while putting Backlund down a bit. He emphasized his background as a tough, no-nonsense wrestler and suggested Backlund wasn't on the same level. It almost felt like he was trying to remind fans who the real powerhouse was. From Backlund's side, there wasn't as much public trash talk or harsh words. Their feud was mostly about what happened in the ring. But hearing the Iron Chic talk like that shows there was definitely some one-sided animosity going on. It's like the Iron Chic wanted to make sure everyone knew that beating Backlund was a big deal for him, and he wasn't shy about letting people know it. So, while Backlund stayed mostly professional, the Iron Chic's words added a lot of fuel to their rivalry, making it one of the more memorable and intense feuds in wrestling history. And we can't wrap up this video without talking about Jimmy Snuka, another name that came with its own kind of tension when it came to Bob Backlund. Now, Snooka was known for his incredible athleticism and wild, high-flying moves that wowed crowds everywhere. In the ring, there was no denying he was something special. Backlund himself even admitted that Snooka was a genius when it came to wrestling. But here's where things get complicated. Backlund wasn't just talking about what happened inside the ropes. He was also critical of Snooka's behavior outside the ring. According to Backlund, Snooka's personal life and actions off-camera held him back from reaching even greater heights in the WWF. Backlund felt that Snooka's conduct outside wrestling wasn't just unprofessional, it was something that could embarrass not only himself, but the entire wrestling community. In an interview with Wrestling Inc., Backlund said something pretty blunt about Snooka. In the ring, he was a genius, but out of the ring, he was an embarrassment to society. Those are strong words, and they show just how serious Backlund was about the importance of character and discipline, both in and out of the spotlight. This kind of criticism wasn't just about personal dislike, it was about how behavior affects your career. Backlund believed that no matter how talented you are in the ring, if you don't have control over your personal life and how you carry yourself, it's going to limit what you can achieve. For him, that was the real issue with Snooka. That wraps up today's video, but don't worry, we'll be back soon with another one. Until then, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss out. Take care and see you next time. Bye for now.